So, is it me, or has there been a serious lack of coverage by some of the leading progressive voices in the movement, and even really in the independent media world? Now, I say that because, well, in the mainstream, they've even been giving Tulsi a lot of coverage. Now, granted, they are trying to denigrate her. Granted, they try to catch her in rhetorical traps that they set for her regarding Assad, regarding the war in Syria, regarding the thing that they've tried to smear her on. Now, granted, she's handled all those gracefully, as anyone could be expected to handle them. So, but the mainstream has been covering her, and I've been seeing her name buzzed around, not necessarily in a good way, but still, at least it's getting some buzz. But here's what's interesting. I've covered, obviously, Tulsi a lot. I've seen Tim Black cover her. Bob TV, shout out to them. Kim Iverson, some up-and-coming YouTubers who do fantastic stories on Tulsi Gabbard. I've seen some newer names that have covered her. Even channels that don't cover politics have covered her. But some of the other progressive voices that are probably more firmly in the Bernie Sanders camp have honestly just, if they pounced on the opportunity to present the smears about her, which was weird to me, because subsequently they've had chances to talk about some of the groundbreaking, mold shattering things that she's done and that she's said on television. I mean, when they tried to smear her with the Russiagate story, the fake NBC story that they put out based off of a completely discredited source, I didn't see TYT cover it, and I don't think I saw most of the progressive indie world cover it, outside of a few of us. The same ones you can probably count on. Jimmy Dore, the same ones you can count on to cover basically any and everything if we have the time to do it. Now, every time, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she burps or wags her finger, or, I love AOC, no shade there, but every time she breathes, if she inhales and exhales too hard, they have stories about her. And yet, Tulsi Gabbard is talking about ending regime change wars. She's shutting down the mainstream narratives that they're putting out, the same narrative that we've seen them put out basically about every progressive that runs contrary to the establishment. And yet we don't see any coverage. Now, I say this not necessarily as an insult to them. I'm not really critiquing them per se. If they have a niche they want to stick with, and whatever, go ahead and do what you got to do. But my point is this. There are a lot of journalists that speak as authorities on many of the issues that we'll speak about during this election and after. There are a lot of people that will tell you all the good about somebody and pretend they have no bad, and then all they can seem to remember about all they can seem to remember about the candidate that they did not pick, that they did not prefer, is the bad. And they can kind of mention the good a little bit, just to seem objective, but they mostly mention the bad. And then when there is good to discuss, like a lot of the conversations that Tulsi Gabbard has had, like the wonderful ads Tulsi Gabbard has had, like the fantastic announcement, for example, that Tulsi Gabbard has had. When they don't cover that stuff, you got to start worrying, because every time Bernie comes out with something, the indie world goes in a frenzy, right? When he announced that he was potentially going to run for 2020 and he was getting his people together again for the third time in like a year, we already knew it was going to happen. Everybody pounced on it just by the idea of Tulsi Gabbard, or of Bernie Sanders running. Every time Bernie burps, anytime his hair goes to the side, there's a story about it. But yet we're seeing something in a candidate that is unlike what we've ever seen before. And it bothers me a bit that there will be people who will pretend to be authorities on these issues, objective authorities on these issues, objective authorities on these candidates. And somehow, some way, they're missing the diamond in the rough. Maybe because, Bernie, Bernie, if you are willing to ignore a couple of things, it's awesome to talk about Bernie because you can pretty much sit from your high horse and not have to have a nuanced discussion about his evolution, because for the most part, he's been consistent, for the most part, with some missteps along the way. But with Tulsi, it does require a more nuanced discussion. You have to have a better understanding of how people work, how people evolve. You have to have a better understanding of yourself and your personal evolution to get where Tulsi Gabbard is coming from. You have to understand how religious indoctrination works and how to break from how people break from the shackles of that. You have to know how much it took and how much it takes and the risk it took for Tulsi Gabbard to step away from the Democratic Party or the DNC and back Bernie Sanders, because she gave up her vice chairwoman position, because they then subsequently ran 12 candidates or more against her in the primary to try to beat her. And then they took all of her funding away from the DCCC. So like, you have to be able to have these very nuanced discussions and say, look, Bernie has been almost perfect in a lot of ways when it comes to policy. Almost. Tulsi has a past. You can't, box her, put her in a box. You can't say she's always been this or always been that or always been 100% this. I get it, right? She has more dimensions to her character. She is a very dynamic person as far as her experiences are concerned. But there are a lot of people who will shy away from that challenge of helping people realize that those experiences are those are the very reason that she is who she is, that she's become what she has become. And when Bernie announces, I will be covering him just as much as I'll be covering Tulsi Gabbard. Because at the end of the day, whether or not I have my preference, I want you all to be making educated decisions on who you'd like to see in office based off of the facts and not this disparate coverage or lack thereof. Because did we not say that this was the same problem that we saw happen to Bernie Sanders? And it would be mighty hypocritical of us to not give the only other progressive in the race a chance by blacking her out of indie media, especially from some of the biggest names. They haven't all, like I said, some of them have covered her, maybe 2, perhaps 3 videos. But Tulsi has, like I said, she's had some pretty groundbreaking conversations, a pretty controversial campaign thus far, where ultimately she ends up being proven as an ally more than anything else, to the point where all the independent journalists, the writers, are pretty much like, we want to see more Democrats acting more like closer to Tulsi than AOC. Not saying that there's anything wrong with AOC is doing, but they're saying Tulsi is much more audacious in her demands for peace and prosperity, not only at home, but abroad as well. That's all they're saying. But that's, once again, a tribute to how she's just very unique. I feel like I would love to see in the independent media world fight more. Not just because Tulsi is a progressive. You fight for the other progressives. Like I said, every time AOC can dance and it's going to get coverage. And that's fine. She's a progressive. I don't know. Yana Mar, fine. Rashida Tlaib, fine. I'm okay with this. With Bernie, same thing. I'm okay with this. But at this point, it seems like there's this consensus of a blackout, basically so that there doesn't look like there's that much competition for Bernie with Tulsi. And let's be honest, it is a competition. There is a legitimate challenge to Bernie Sanders' reign as the head progressive in Tulsi Gabbard. There is. That's not a bad thing. I want my candidates competing to see who is further left. I would figure that if you care about the people, then that's what you like to see as well. But that lets you know who you should be listening to, right? Because there are some of us who are in this because of profit, because they saw a niche, right? And that's both the left and the right. They saw a window of opportunity, and they had the privilege to pursue that opportunity, and were given, they were just given chances to, and there's nothing wrong with that. A job is a job. I get it. But once again, when it comes to your decisions, how you vote, who you support and who you don't support, there are a lot of us in here who we didn't join because it was profitable. That's definitely not why I joined. I gave up a very secure future for this because I saw corruption happening in front of me and couldn't ignore it. People asked me to speak on the experience that I had, and I couldn't ignore them. And most importantly, I see where this world is heading if we don't do anything, and the least I can do is speak on it from an educated perspective, from my personal experiences and the experiences of others, and hopefully give you an objective, rational perspective in this world of craziness, which is why my catchphrase is to find your balance. Because there's seemingly almost none in this world right now. And that goes for the independent media world as well. But once again, that lets you know where you should be at. So I hope that you do find that balance right here at the MCSC Network. Thanks for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. You can donate to our Patreon and keep helping the network grow by clicking on the link in the description below. And also, make sure you join us at JustNForm.com. And finally, make sure you subscribe to us on Roku and be part of the very first independent news network on Roku TV. But more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace.